Do I need the microphone? You think so?
Yes.
All right. It's all your fault. Years ago, I woke up, I had a lot of excitement in my heart, and somebody came to me and said, "It's all your fault." And when I heard those words, I reacted probably the way many people do. It was a negative reaction. I said, "Ah, damn, what do you mean it's my fault? I didn't even do anything." And then I sat down with that person and we started talking, and he walked me through things. And he said, "You know, sometimes people, they think they're not even adding to the problem." And they are. And I learned that probably we're responsible for more of the things that are not so exciting that happen around us than we'd like to assume responsibility for. We talked about the topic for today, failure. I don't want to talk about failure business-wise. You've got great guys here, guys with lots of money, lots of success. Let's talk about something a little bit bigger than that. Let's talk about your life. Because I really believe that failure in business is failure in life. And success in business can be success in life. I used to live in Dallas, Texas, and I attended, if you've ever lived in Dallas, that's a great place to start to attend a megachurch. And so I'm not Baptist, but I started going to a Baptist church, and there are 3,000 people in this church. I've never been in a church that big. And that guy is a phenomenal speaker, and he gets up there and he starts talking about what I have since then made a part of my DNA, and he calls it lifestyle evangelism. And he talks about, I don't want to go knocking door to door, and I don't want to call people one-on-one. I want to live a life that when you see me, I don't even have to interact with you, and you walk away and you say, "My goodness, what does he have?" And so I started thinking about this, and I had the great opportunity to be a teacher assistant under a guy who today has his own TV show in the United States. For those of you from the U.S., you'll know the name Dr. Phil. And here was a guy who was a genius. And we learned, the first thing we learned from him was that I am responsible for how you treat me. I am responsible for the reactions I get in this country and Hungary. I believe you grow where you're planted. If we're here, this is the place to make a difference. And if we talk about a negative Hungary, it's probably negative because partly it's my fault. And the fact is, unless I send a different message, it's not going to be heard. People don't pick this up on their own. There are some wonderful speakers in the United States. I love the whole motivational industry. And there are a lot of people who want to be motivational, but they're only motivational when they're on stage. When it comes to credibility and doing it in their life, they don't. So when I take responsibility for my communication, if I go home and I scream at my wife and she says nothing, and then I do it again the following day, she is suddenly sending me an answer that says, "That's okay." So don't come to me 13 years later and tell me, "Why are you doing this?" So as entrepreneurs, everybody here has got a small flame that's burning in their heart. Maybe you've already built a business, you're on building a business, or you're going to build a business. Make success your lifestyle and make it part of your communication. So the first thing I choose when all of a sudden I'm confronted with all this comes from a wonderful book called Fish. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of a book titled Fish. It started by a fish market in Seattle, Washington. They're in a mall. They sell fish. And they decide that they want to be the most famous, most successful fish market in the world. And so they come up with 4 pillars. I'm not going to tell you 4, but I will tell you one, and it's CYA. Now, if you're in the U.S., the first thing you hear, Drew, what do you think of when you hear CYA?
Cover your ass.
Cover your this part. It doesn't stand for cover your this part. It stands for choose your attitude. Now, people think this thing is so difficult. There's a wonderful guy. He's a preacher also in California. And as a child, he would write in the book. He'd hear these things from the pulpit, and then he'd write in there, and he'd use the initials GBH. GBH. And after months of filling his book like this, somebody asked him, "What? I see you writing in this book every Sunday, and you write GBH. What does it stand for?" It stands for great, but how? We all have wonderful advice. You need to change your attitude. Great, but how? Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm not a self-help kind of guy. I like to make sure my work is congruent with what I believe. But there is one very important step that you need to do, and that's you make a decision. There are so many people challenged, facing issues today in their own personal lives. How do I lose weight? How do I get more exercise? How do I become more popular? How do I change this? How do I change that? It starts with a decision. Because if you want to go running tomorrow, the most important thing you can do is you make yourself a commitment and then you keep it. Because that's the first place we all trip up. I'm going to do it tomorrow. And then the morning comes up and we hear a little rainfall on the rooftop and we think, oh, do I really want to go running? I usually run in the mornings, and I can assure you the one question I do not ask myself at 5:30 in the morning is, do I want to go running? Because I know what the answer is at, and I'm responsible for my success, so I set myself up for failure. Or have success. I don't even ask the question. So the first step you have to do, and I'm going to give you real practical things that you can actually take with you. First thing you need to do is you got to make a decision. Am I going to look at life in a positive way, or am I not going to look at it in a positive way? Obviously, I look at it in a very positive way. It doesn't come easy. There are a lot of people around here, especially in this country, that will do everything they can, and some of them are actually your relatives, so they're hanging from the same family tree. The fact is, I need to make my decision and then stand by it. So first thing, I make a decision. Effective now, not tomorrow, not a week from now, not when the GDP goes up and we get a new government. I make the decision now. Step number 2. And every one of you can do this because it was done to you as a kid. You have to make a decision that I will become an encourager. There are so many people who have wonderful ideas. I hinted at it. The cemeteries are full of wonderful ideas that were never developed. The fact is, one of the things that keeps people back from taking risk and failing is the fact that they lack the self-confidence, they lack the support, they didn't get it at home, they didn't get it in the school, and they go through life suffering. They have this internal yearning that says, I know I'm capable of more, but they're held back by lack of self-confidence. One of the things I do as a hobby is I teach people how to create self-confidence in their lives. And once they get that to the inside, they get it for the first time, maybe the second time in their life, they feel a spark inside. And so you need to become, along with me, somebody who encourages others. Instead of hearing a crazy idea and immediately cutting it down and say, that will never work, you say, that's a great idea, let's develop it further. I have a 10-year-old son. He puts a paper box in the middle of the living room, sits in it and says, this is a ship. And my job is to encourage him, where are the oars and which direction is the wind blowing from? If I try to convince him that it is not a ship, as many people do, and eventually succeed and feel, aha, my college degree has triumphed. I have convinced a 10-year-old he is sitting in a box. I have done eternal damage in the psyche of that child. There aren't enough psychologists and people to help those who have been damaged. I know public speaking for me is a passion. 42% of the people say this is their number one fear. On that list, number 7 on that list is death. Think about that. You go to a funeral, most people would rather be laying in the coffin than talking about the guy laying in the coffin. Fear of public speaking is not a genetic problem. And it happens in the U.S., it happens in Hungary. The kid gets up to answer a question, the teacher embarrasses him, he's embarrassed, and he says the way to avoid that is never put myself in this situation again. And I'll tell you what, that's true for the U.S., it's true for Hungary. But when you release that for these people, magic happens. And they take responsibility for their own lives, and they take responsibility for someone else's life. So number 1, make a decision. Number 2, become an encourager. Make that a part of your psyche. Don't wait for the weekend. Don't wait for that right opportunity. Find somebody every day and lift them up. I don't care if they're 8 or 80. Do something nice and get people to start feeling better about others. We talked about the lack of trust. You bet there's a lack of trust in this country. There's a lack of trust in this world. What about actually doing something for somebody without having our hand out trying to make a little money on it? It's our responsibility, it's my fault if I'm not doing my part to restore the confidence. I make a decision, I become an encourager, and then the third part of the plan, very simple, I don't care how busy you are, find a way to give it away. Make it part of your schedule. I happen to believe that we owe a responsibility to whatever society we're in, that we give away at least 10% of what we have. Now I know some people don't have the money, give away your time. St. Baptist Church, these guys are serious, $60 million annual budget. January they're talking about money. They believe in tithing. And they get up, and the pastor's telling everybody about tithing, and the guy gets up. Is that 10% before or after taxes? He looks at him, he smiles, he says, what couldn't be an easier question to answer? He says, how would you like your blessings? Before or after taxes? And the fact is, you can come up with 100 reasons why not, but if you're not poor enough to accept charity, then you're rich enough to give it away. And there are a lot of people who don't have the opportunities that you have or had in your life. And the best thing we can do is, before we get too far ahead of them, is to encourage the ones behind us by showing them a hand, an open hand, and helping instill in them what we have and what will be required for them to move forward. And if you do that, they're simple. There isn't a single person in here who can walk out of here and say, I don't have the money, I don't have the time to do this. You can. And if it becomes your lifestyle, then you will become an evangelist for entrepreneurism. You will become an evangelist for people taking risks, because they'll look at you and say, yeah, he failed, but look at him, he's got a smile, for crying out loud. It's not all about money. It's about what we can give back. And if you do these three simple things, if you find a way to make that decision now, not tomorrow, now, and you encourage and you give it away, a year from now, when you could be standing up here and somebody accuses you of it being your fault, you can stand here with a smile on your face and say, you damn right it's my fault, and I'm proud of it. I encourage you to make it your fault.